Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining me once again today. My name is General Confusion, and welcome back to Total War Warhammer 2. I almost forgot the name of the game there for a moment. Anyway, I am playing the Dark Elves, continuing my little exploration of this faction. They're very, very solid. I really, really like how they play. Although that might just be because they're very easy to win with, to be frank. And I am playing against the Greenskins. The Greenskins were my favorite Old World faction. Sadly, they're a lot less powerful now than they used to be, and I'm not sure if that's just relative or if it really is a function of the transition into Warhammer 2, but they're just, I mean, in Warhammer 1 they were kind of middle of the pack. Now I think they're below that by a significant margin. But anyway, let's talk about the Dark Elves. So, I brought Malekith because Malekith is very, very solid. Malekith is probably one of the highest damage spellcasters in the game. He consistently gets over 100 kills in multiplayer battles. I've brought Gaze of Malice, which does very good damage against unarmored infantry. Soul Stealer, which is pretty cool in the sense that it sucks hit points away from people that you target. Blade Wind, which does a ton of damage against lightly armored infantry. One of the best vortex spells in the game, I would say, certainly for its cost. Chill Wind, which is always useful, cheap, efficient. Power of Darkness, which can be nice in a pinch, although I don't use it all that often. Got the Noxious Breath, of course. I've brought the Destroyer, which will increase the enemy's ability to recharge when they're near Malekith, and Spiteful Conjuration. My army, I have one unit of Witch Elves for their ability to force the enemy to rampage, and they have been working out, haven't they? You could grind meat on those things. I've got one unit of Harganeth Executioners for their anti-infantry power. I have one unit of Cold One Knights, just to fend off Arachnaroks or Boarboy Biggins, any of that. I have two units of Dread Spears, one on each flank, and my center line is 3 Black Ark Corsairs. I have one Khainite Assassin here, and he is equipped with the Dark Venom for extra weapon damage, Assassin's Trophy for obvious reasons, and the Web of Shadows, which I never, ever remember to use right. I always, every time I click on this, I think, oh, it's a targetable, and I click it, and it goes off, and then I go, wait a second, why can't I target? Oh, that's right, it's an AoE. Way over here, I have a unit of Dark Riders with shields, Vanguard deployed, hidden in the woods. And up front, I have 2 units of Shades. Now, Shades are the Dark Elf, what do you call it? The Dark Elf hybrid unit, in the sense that Gutter Runners are the Skaven hybrid unit. They have a powerful ranged attack, and they have good melee stats. The difference is, Shades do not have fire on the move, but they do have very high missile damage, and it's armor piercing. And of course they can stalk and they can Vanguard deploy. And they're fast for infantry. So these guys are kind of like, they're like Dark Riders with crossbows, except longer ranged and harder hitting. And also they have better melee combat stats. The only disadvantage is that they are slower, since they have 42 speed. But 42 speed is still enough to allow these guys to reposition pretty quickly and to keep away from infantry. So they're very, very powerful, especially if the enemy can't see them. My opponent has brought a front line of mainly Savage Orcs with a few Biggins mixed in. Just 2 Biggins, 5 Savage Orcs, I believe. He's got 1 Goblin Big Boss on a Spider with Slippery. He has brought 1 Arachnarok Spider way over here. Not the Arachnarok Queen, just a regular old Spider. He's got 1 unit of Boarboy Biggins. He's got Goblin Archers and Durusty Errors, which is an excellent combination, real staple in most Orc and Goblin lists. He is led by Azag the Slaughterer on his Wyvern, which is an interesting pick. I can see why he went for it, because Azag is fast enough that Malekith can't catch him, and with the Lore of Death, Azag could theoretically just fly around using Spirit Leech and pick away at Malekith's health. He's also brought the Fate of Buna, which is a lot more expensive than it used to be, but still valuable. He's got Get On with it, which I always take off because all it does is plus 8% charge bonus, and that's hardly worth anything, really. But so, having the Wyvern can be good for the Greenskins, but in this matchup I'm not sure it's really worth it because, well, basically because Azag can't really do anything against Malekith. He'll get crapped on if he tries to go into combat. And with Malekith around, Azag also can't dive in to help the fight because Malekith will jump on him and he'll get crapped on. But Azag is generally a pretty solid pick because he has the Lore of Death. And then my opponent has also taken 4 Goblin Wolf Riders. He's got 2 back in this corner and 2 back in this corner. So he's trying some sneaky outflanking action. So the Wolf Riders are kind of shuffling around here. Most of my forces are hidden in the woods at the moment, but he can see Malekith, and I believe he can also see the Witch Elves, and possibly this unit of Spearmen. He can also see these Dread Spears. Okay, so Azag is flying around this way to kind of scout. I didn't see the Arachnarok at first, so I just thought, okay, we'll just send the Shades forward, get some volleys onto these biggins, and holy crap, look at that damage. With that armor piercing, Shades are devastating against Orcish infantry, which have no shields and little armor. These biggins have already lost 10 models and half their health. Just dropping a little bit of damage on these savage orcs just to keep them honest. The Shades, meanwhile, are now moving in this direction to kind of maneuver over towards the Arachnarok. Malekith has gotten Spirit Leech, but it doesn't hurt him all that much. He's going to drop a Blade Wind onto these biggins and do a bunch of damage to him. And then he's just going to fly over and breathe some poison onto this Arachnarok. Did a respectable chunk of damage. Azag now is going to come into combat, which is not a good idea. But since Malekith is now under fire from these Goblin Archers and Rusty Arrows, he is going to start taking damage. Over here, the Orcish and Dark Elf infantry are going to smash into each other. The Black Ark Corsairs are going into the Savage Orcs, and not doing too terribly well, but they're doing alright. The Arachnarok is going in, and immediately it's getting eaten alive by my archery. Those Shades are doing a ton of damage. So let me slow down here, because now the interesting stuff happens. So, these Goblin Wolf Riders are coming in for their flanking maneuver. These two are charging into the Shades. Unfortunately, Goblin Wolf Riders are just too pathetic to beat Shades. If you look at them, 18 charge bonus, melee attack 22, melee defense 20, versus the Shades, melee attack 42, and melee defense 35 with 30 weapon strength. Goblin Wolf Riders will lose this fight outright. So I don't have to protect my Shades against this. The Shades will protect themselves. However, I do have units available nearby to protect them, including these Cold One Knights that are sweeping in right behind these Goblin Wolf Riders and already murdering them very, very badly. Up here, these Savage Orcs are out of control. This Goblin Big Boss is stuck in combat. This Arachnarok is fighting my spears. Over here, Malekith flew over, dropped a whole bunch of magic, and routed the Rusty Arrows immediately, as well as doing some pretty healthy damage to those Goblin Archers. But that's not really the big prize. He's flying back over here now to get involved in the main fight. We've got a Fate of Buna going down on the Harganeth Executioners. Good target, but a little bit late. The Orc Boarboy Biggins are charging into combat. Over here, my Cold One Knights have already ripped apart 2 units of Wolf Riders, and my Shades, with a backup charge from Malekith and the Assassin, have torn apart the other 2. Over on this side, I am getting flanked by all this infantry, but my Canine Assassin is going to charge over here to blob them up, while my Shades go back to work on the Arachnarok, and a lot of work it is. Getting a little bit of magic onto the Savage Orcs, and I just procced Murderous Prowess, so things are about to get even worse for the Greenskins. The Arachnarok is really taking a lot of damage from that fire. Over here, my infantry has convincingly wrapped this fight up. About to get rear-charged by Azag, but he really doesn't want to be on the ground right now. My Cold One Knights get charged by the Orc Boarboy Biggins, unfortunately. But it's not going to save the Greenskin army. The Wolf Riders are maneuvering over here. The Canine Assassin is holding down all this infantry by itself. Malekith just breathed on the Arachnarok and drove it entirely off the field, and the Shades are about to take it down. So there goes the Arachnarok. Azag is on the ground, getting charged by the Dark Riders, and in comes Malekith to seal the deal. Over here, I dropped another Gaze of Malice onto these infantry just to keep them honest. My infantry over here is finishing off these returned Goblin Wolf Riders and some Savage Orcs. The Shades are back in melee and doing fine, and at that point my opponent conceded defeat. Azag just went down under the assault from Malekith, so with his leadership dead, his Arachnarok dead, and his infantry crumbled on this side, all he had left was these pockets of infantry here and a few Wolf Riders, and that really wasn't going to be enough. So, interesting match. I think it really kind of highlights some of the real strengths of the Dark Elf roster. One of those strengths is Malekith. Malekith is a hugely powerful lord. I almost think Malekith is the best lord in the game at this point, although I'm hesitant to make such a sweeping claim. He's very, very good. He's very powerful, and more than that, he's very efficient, because he has the breath attack when he's on Seraphon. He has all his spells, he has pretty good melee stats, and he has his utility items that can be used to take away other people's abilities. So Malekith is very, very solid. The Dark Elf heroes in general are pretty solid as well. The Knight Assassin can be very useful as a meat shield and tie-up unit, or, of course, you can use him as an assassin with the Web of Shadows, with the potion that gives him plus 75% weapon strength. He can be surprisingly deadly. Dark Elf infantry is very, very effective for its price. The Dread Spears, even the Dread Spears did fine. The Blackheart Corsairs did fine. The Witch Elves got a huge number of kills. They just charged in there and tore those Biggins and Savage Orcs apart. They killed like almost 2 units by themselves. And of course the Hargoneth Executioners did quite a bit of work as well, despite being hit with the Fate of Buna. On top of that, the Shades are extremely efficient snipers, because with their stock and their armor-piercing missile damage, as well as their good melee stats, they can pretty much defend themselves from light cavalry, and they can put a huge amount of damage down on armored monsters, enemy lords, and even armored infantry. Black Orcs, for example. Black Orcs would hate Shades. They would just melt almost as fast as those Biggins did. Cold One Knights, they're not as effective as, well, anything else in the Dark Elf roster, but they do their job. They don't have to be super efficient. Cavalry is, I would say, one of the Dark Elf roster's weak points. Their cavalry is in general pretty mediocre, although Dark Riders are quite good. But, Cold One Knights, they're still okay. They still do a decent job. They're not quite as effective anti-large as Boarboy Biggins, interestingly, but because they have Rampage, basically. But they still, basically all they exist for is to keep the enemy off of the infantry line and the leadership, which is going to do most of the killing. So, thank you all so much for watching that. I really appreciate each and every one of my viewers. If you liked this video, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me how good I am, tell me how bad I am, I don't care which. Ask me some questions if you have any questions about strategy or what's going on in the game. And of course, we'll be seeing more of these videos very, very soon. Thank you all so much, and take care.